Florida residents of Reddit, what's the weirdest thing you've seen your neighbors doing? Florida isn't any stranger than other states. They just have a law that allows the press access to almost every bizarre situation. Thank you. Nicest people, great economy, tons and tons of cheap and free stuff to do. And I live in North FL, so we only get 3 months of brutal heat. Other 9 months are pure paradise. And lots of fun ways to beat the heat when it is here. Salt life may be corny, but there's a reason for it being such a popular bumper sticker. I'm in for Jack's St. John's. No plans to leave anytime soon. I lived in FL for 10 years and loved it. Now I live in LA and love it even more. A lot of South Florida, basically Miami, Fort Lauderdale, feels milder to me than Jack's or Orlando due to the proximity to the ocean. It's not the only one by any means. My neighbors across the street smoke. Not like when someone steps outside after dinner for a quick cigarette. I mean they smoke on a religious level. They sit on their front porch all day and all night and smoke. It seems to be all that they do. 95 degrees outside, 100% humidity, time to smoke. Hurricane blowing through, time to smoke. 2 AM on Christmas Eve, time to smoke. Walking to the car to go buy more smokes. Time to smoke. Nice people overall. It's just strange. They never leave for more than a few minutes at a time. Is smoking possibly so good that 2 people could dedicate their lives to it? I could answer, but it's time for me to smoke. My neighbors are ancient retirees from Canada. The man has some sort of terminal illness that necessitated the move, but still manages to pull his classic, equally ancient Mustang out of storage at random times and days of the week, rev it up for 20 minutes, and then cover it until he returns it to his lot. Meanwhile, his wife religiously sweeps every exterior side of the house with a hard surface down to the road. She will pick up leaves by hand. Then she stands there and stares at my house for a good half hour. I'm not a fan of retirees. Clean the exterior of your hose. My elderly neighbor used to vacuum the tree in her front yard. She only vacuumed her side though. It was a large tree on the property line. How does one vacuum a tree? She used a shop vacation. Here is a picture I took of her doing it in 2013. This was not the only time, just the time I managed to snap a pic through my living room blinds. Lady vacuums tree. Looks like my grandma, and this is something she would do. How is easy? It's the why that makes it interesting. It turns out, after 10 years of living in my house, that all of my neighbors have animals of some kind that make noise in the night. Out of the 5 houses that are nearest to me, my first immediate neighbor breeds dogs, my second one feeds the stray cats in the neighborhood leading to lots of meowing outside, my third one also breeds dogs, but a different breed, the fourth one changes so frequently that there's been no permanent resident for 2 years straight, and the fifth one has 3 big loud dogs. I was wondering why sleeping in uni was so much better than home. This past Christmas Eve, the only house on the block that none of the neighbors knew who lived there, but we all suspected of being some sort of drug house, had a shootout inside of it, and my old Marine neighbor and his buddy just casually walked down the street to the house, beer in hand, and hassled all the fleeing people from the house as they one by one left the property, and when the police showed up they then hassled them by saying they were too late and didn't have to draw their weapons, since everyone had already left. I was born and raised in Florida. It isn't so much as the one-time stories, but more like the what is acceptable day to day. When you move out of Florida and realize that every time you say something people think that you are crazy, then you have to look inside yourself and think, how is that not normal? Do people not do that? This is the truth right here. Florida tends to lower your standards unless you're rolling with high company. Nothing. I live in a family-friendly suburb. My neighbors include a family of 4, a retired couple, a single mom of 2, and so on. We're just regular people that go to work and mow our lawns and spend time with family and friends and live normal American lives. Florida is like public transport. If you can't spot the crazy one. Could it be? Is this possible? I seriously went walking the streets during a hurricane just to see the damage, and one of my neighbors washing his car. No power, raining and very windy, but this guy has the cleanest car on the block. I looked out the window during a hurricane and saw this guy walking around. during the hurricane just walking around. It's like the guy who just played golf during the Hawaii missile scare. Not in Florida, but Texas. I had this Russian neighbor for a few years and his fence wouldn't open or something weird like that, so instead of getting bolt cutters, he tied a rope to his truck and tied it to the fence gate and started driving in the grass to try and tear the fence gate off. It worked, but it happened at like 3 AM, so I was pretty annoyed. It was 70 degrees outside. I walked outside to get the mail, as usual, and the neighbors were layered up, wearing coats, scarves, boots, gloves, and warm winter hats. I understand that 70 is a bit chilly for Florida, but geez, it's not that cold. Mow the lawn in a thunderstorm. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. I tried to do some edging in the rain and the neighbors were giving me weird looks. Plot twist: he lives next to a school. Doesn't all the grass clump together when it's wet? Old neighbor in Miami, Florida knocked on our door covered in spaghettios asking to use our hose to clean himself off. Vertical bar. Still don't know what the reason was, but he was notorious for his chaos next door. Notorious for his chaos next door. Go on. Bake brownies during a hurricane. Those were delusions and half made. If you have never been to a hurricane party, you're missing out. Carrot ditto. Time of work and school, because of a hurricane, just becomes a huge excuse to party. They're the same as your neighbors. We are just the only state with public police records. Or yeah, Publix. In one Tampa location, the one in Seminole Heights, there was this dude whom we called the shoelicker. Guess what he was known for? We have bears in our neighborhood built right on top of a wildlife preserve, and one day one of them got into the trash cans, and for some reason my next door neighbor thought the best course of action was to chase it with a baseball bat. Luckily we stopped her. Not from Florida, but one day my neighbor put a 8-foot inflatable Yoda in their yard. Inflatable, I am. Take revenge on neighbors for shaming me, I shall. Before the first half of Irma arrived, my area got some of the worst of Irma. When the wind was picking up to like 60 miles per hour, my neighbors were riding their bikes up and down the street, I guess for the thrill. I live in Miami. My male neighbor sometimes goes out green dressed with a black duffel bag full of sharp tools. He finds bad people and reduces them like this, then he stabbed them in the chest. A grandpa checking the mail in his tidy whities. A grandpa checking the mail in his tidy whities. Tighty. You can remember, because they are tight and GHT comes after I. Not neighbors, but every morning outside of Dunkin' Donuts I'd see 3 black bears in the dumpster eating yesterday's leftovers. The wildlife control finally relocated them. My neighbor got into a fight with his lady friend in the carport, punched a hole through the grill of their minivan, and then later, that day covered the hole with a Confederate flag. The amount of times the ambulance comes to my community school. My school is right next to a police fire department, which is right next to a highway. At the neighborhood pool, my neighbors grilled a steak then threw it into the pool to see which one of their children would grab it first. Whoever grabbed it ate it. My dad used to live in Florida, and he said he saw a man fire a gun into his in-ground pool, drag a dead alligator out of it, and skin it in his yard. Literally getting a golf cart that I've seen their kids use once or twice, since this isn't a very wealthy neighborhood and you can easily walk to each house. I feel tame answering here, but I definitely watched my neighbor punch a hole in the front door because his girlfriend kept locking him out. Walk their dog on a leash as they mow the lawn. Sounds like there's lots of bizarre lawn mowing on this thread. My in-laws saw an approximate 8 to 10-year-old in a thong bikini at their complex pool. My brother has been the weird guy paddling a kayak down the street after a hurricane. One of my neighbors spray paints his car every so often, if it get rusty. A homeless guy trying to force his way into a dollar store with a knife. My neighbor was walking his iguana. Mad respect for the lad. Absolutely nothing other than not being fazed by wind and rain. Nothing. Do you think we ride gators to work? List too long even for a TL. Doctor. Well, this one time at crocodile camp. Not from Florida, but stab a goat.